What's up, guys, and welcome to the Real Local People podcast. You know my spiel. We make a lot of content for you guys about, the things to do in Southern Indiana, places to live, places to eat, that kind of thing. But this podcast is all about the people. Today, I am with local real estate investor, real estate agent, published author. There's a bunch of other stuff too. But Jesse Allen, what's up, man?
What's going on, buddy? Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, how do we get to this point? You're investing now. Where did it all start? You were born, and then what?
Yeah, honestly, people ask that all the time, and it's kind of hard to think about like where you started. And obviously, like I was born in Savannah and moved up here, and I don't know if you want me to go into that right now about.
Yeah, I want to hear the whole story because I think you got a pretty interesting one.
Yeah,
stuff you did before this.
When I was in Savannah, I tried to get into the military and couldn't. I have like medical issues with my ear when I was a kid. And
Tell us about your medical. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't worry about HEPA. And so I got declined from the military just because I still had a tube in my ear and I didn't want to have it removed. Yeah. And so my brother, he passed away when I was a kid, when I was 17, and he was a police officer for Savannah PD, and kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps. He was a role model of mine. And so went to police academy in Savannah and had the opportunity to get a job down in Brunswick, Georgia, which is close to like the Florida line. And, going through that process and everything, I actually got let go from that job because I looked for the next best thing. So I had always wanted to be on with, the county police. And probably 4 weeks after I got hired, I got a call from the county police and had the opportunity to take that job. And whenever the city police found out about it, I got let go, which is really crazy. I was young and dumb, always looking for the next best thing. And so at the time we were like, hey, we just want a fresh start, So we had come up to my wife's sister-in-law, my wife's sister. So it's my sister-in-law.
Gotcha.
She lives over in Kentucky, and we came up for Thanksgiving. And when we left to go back home, we were just talking in the car, and we were like, man, we really enjoyed like being here. Like something just felt normal, like it was just home. And my wife at the time was like, I feel the same exact way. Like, let's talk about it. Like we've never moved anywhere. Like we've always lived in Georgia for the longest time. That's
so interesting because we hear that from so many different. I think we're up to like 10 guests now on the podcast, and we get similar stories. As someone myself who's lived here since I was born, I don't know any different. I just think, it's just Southern Indiana, whatever. But there's a lot of people that we've talked to that are local staples in this area that just happen to be passing through or ended up here for some reason, just liked it and stayed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, we didn't have any ties to here. I'd never been here before other than visiting her family.
Right.
And when we got back home, we really sat down and had that conversation. And, I was not making a lot of money at the time. She wasn't making a lot of money at the time, and just kind of getting by. And we were still living with parents at that point. And I mean, hell, at that point I was still 23 years old and just trying to figure out life. And we made the decision. We're like, hey, let's go ahead and do this. And all we had was a 2002 Chevy Cavalier. We had like obviously like a bed, the clothes on our back and stuff. Right. And we didn't want to rent a U-Haul because we couldn't afford it. And we talked to her sister, and she was like, yeah, you can live with us for a little bit while you guys get on your feet. And let our parents know. And we packed up the car with whatever we could fit in it, and we moved up here. Didn't have a job lined up, didn't have anything.
Right.
And that's how it started. I mean, my first job when I moved here, I worked in a mailroom in Frankfort, Kentucky, for I guess it was like a college admissions company. And I enjoyed it, but I mean, you're making $10 an hour. Like you're not making any money. Like you can barely pay bills with that.
Hard to get ahead on that.
Yeah. And she was a hostess at Olive Garden actually. And I was like, I don't really like what I do. I have to drive 45 minutes to work every day. Like it costs me about as much in gas each week as I'm making. And so I made the jump over there and started waiting tables at Olive Garden. Was my first, like my second job here, and just worked my way through the ranks. And it's weird. Like as you have jobs in your life, you look around and you just realize that you think differently than other people. Like in my mind, it was, hey, I want to be the best at what I do. And my dad always told me, if you want to do something, be the best at it. Otherwise, why are you even doing it?
Yeah.
And he said, you can get paid for your brain or your back. You get to decide. And for me, I was like, well, at this point, I'm young. I need to make money. I'm going to get paid for my back. So waiting tables, moved up to bartender. Then I moved into like the training position, and I applied for a manager position at that company probably 4 times, and every time I got declined.
Really?
And, 24, 25 years old at this point. And I remember sitting down for my last interview for a manager, and I thought I gave them all the right answers like the previous 3 times. And they were like, hey, why do you deserve this job? And I was so irritated. I said, I earned it. I said, I've put in the time. I said, I've busted my butt. I said, I've done everything you've asked. I said, I feel like I've earned it at this point. And I still didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I was done at that point. I said, I can't do it anymore. So I applied for other manager positions at other restaurants. I had a ton of experience at this point. This is 4 years in the restaurant business.
Right.
And I got a manager job at Bob Evans, believe it or not.
Nice.
And I don't think anybody that knows me knows I was a manager at Bob Evans.
Did not.
And it was the first place that called me. And I worked there for probably 6 months. I was making decent money at that point. And then I got recruited to Logan's Roadhouse over on Dixie Highway to be their bar manager. And
just making the rounds.
Man. Just job hopping. Yeah. And that wasn't the way that I wanted to live my life.
Right.
I was chasing the money is all I was doing. Like, oh, somebody else offered me more money. Let's go with it.
Right.
And I did that for about 2 years as a bar manager. And it was tough. I mean, you're working long hours, you're working nights and weekends. And then I found out that my wife at the time was pregnant, and she's also a restaurant manager at this point. So she's a manager at Olive Garden, and I'm at Logan's as a manager. So we're making pretty decent money. We're probably making 6 figures between the two of us.
Also,
and our
probably
income.
Tough schedules to work around each other.
Absolutely.
Both being in the
like she's
business.
working day shift, I'm working night shift at this point. And so whenever we found out that we were going to have our son Ashton, I just realized that like, hey, something needed to change because once he was born, one of us had to be there, but we both wanted to be a part of his life. Yeah. And when we sold our house in Louisville to move to Indiana, our agent at the time, I had called like 4 or 5 agents and nobody answered because we wanted to see this house over here in Jeffersonville. And Dave Ballmer was the only one that answered out of the 4 or 5 agents.
Yeah.
And he showed us the house. We liked it. We wrote the offer, got it accepted. And we're sitting at the closing table and he's like, hey, have you guys ever thought about a career in real estate? Right. We're like, no, we make, 50, 60 grand a year each. Like we would never leave our job. Like, cause in our mind, like that was great money and it is good money. And, like 6 weeks go by after we move in, I'm still working at the restaurant and I'm working late at night. And I was like, any job I've had, I've always felt like I was the hardest working person that was there. And that's a tough position to be in because like then you kind of resent the people that are around you. You're always looking for the next best thing. Like you want to be around like-minded people that want to work hard. And so I called Dave and I was like, hey, you remember like 6 weeks ago, you sold us a house and you sat at the closing table and said, hey, have you ever thought about a career in real estate? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, actually, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to your wife. And I was like, oh, okay. And what I didn't know at the time also is that he says that to everybody at the closing table.
Yeah. It's not a bad move.
And so he's like, come in, shadow me, ride with me for, a few times and see what you think. And I did that. Like when I wasn't working at the restaurant, I would go and I'd ride around in his car and go on appointments with him and like listen to him make calls. And I was like, hey, I think this is something I want to do. And so I spent the next 4 weeks working 2 hours a day after I got off work and completed my test, got my license. And that's how I got into it. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made the comment about not thinking like other people, and I can tell you whatever career you get into, you're not going to think like you think like nobody I've ever seen, you in particular. So I think it makes sense to get into real estate. And then as far as like working harder than other people, I mean the thing for me too is wanting to be around other people that work hard, but also feeling like you're going to be compensated for working harder. If you are going to work harder than the person next to you, then you should either make more money or be able to work less or whatever you decide that's going to do for your lifestyle. But so I know the story around, you've come in, been very successful agent. Obviously, you've started your own team. What I wanted to get out to our clients or to our listeners, excuse me, I'm used to clients and our business to our listeners, is the investing side. So what got you into real estate investing besides the obvious working in real estate? Was there a moment where you realized you wanted to do more than just sell houses? You wanted to buy them too?
When you're in real estate, you work with a lot of different types of clients. And I found that I was working with a lot of investors. I was doing cold calling. I was just talking to random people, seeing if they wanted to sell their house. And when good deals came up, I had some investor friends and I would pass it off to them. And they had the contractors, they had the money. And I would sit at the closing table and I see what I'm making. And then I'd watch them flip this house and then I'd sell it for them and I saw what they would make.
Right.
And you do that so many times and you're like, why not me? Like, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And the first thing that pops in your head is, because you don't have money. Like, you don't have $150,000 to go out and buy a house and renovate it. Yeah. You don't know how to do the work. And so that was the biggest problem for me was, where do I find the money? And so I knew if I could solve that problem, I already had the deal and I already had relationships with contractors because, like being in real estate, you talk to a lot of different people that are going to do the work. And so one of my best friends at the time, Perry, I actually knew him from the restaurant. He was talking to me about wanting to flip a house as well. And so our first house that we bought, I don't even know how we paid for it, honestly. I'm trying to think. Like, we may have financed it. I may have just had money in savings. Like, I think about that moment a lot, and I have no idea how we paid for that house. It was cheap. I think we bought it for $35,000. Yeah. So, it wasn't a ton. And we did all the work on that house ourselves. Yeah. Like, replaced flooring. We put beams under the house. And what I realized in that moment was that, hey, my real estate business is crashing because I'm spending so much time on this house and doing the work. And I was like, that's not feasible. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And we finished the house. We put it on the market. Couldn't sell it. And that's the worst feeling in the world is like when you put all this money into a house and you can't get rid of it. And I had somebody reach out to me and was like, hey, I don't have the best credit. I can't get finance for it. Would you sell it to me on owner financing? And I talked to my business partner, Perry, at the time, and he's like, I don't want to do that. Right. And I was like, here's an opportunity for us to sell the house. We're no longer responsible for taxes and insurance, which is great. And we can make interest on the money that we're going to sell it to her on. And he didn't want to do it. So I said, hey, if I gave you $10,000, would you just walk away from the house and let me have it so I can sell it to her on it? And he did. And that was the first creative financing deal I did. Yeah. And I was like, it's actually really smart, and had no idea what I was doing. Like, I'm just kind of like going with the flow, never read a book about it, never watched a podcast about it, never did anything. And she lived in that house for 2 years and called me and said, hey, we don't want the house anymore. Like, you can have it back. Like, we don't want to sell it. You just take it back. So we got all that done. And I just sold it to someone else for about $10,000 more than we had it on the market for the first time. So
you got a couple of years worth of payments basically on your owner's financing and then just got the house back anyway. Yeah. So it's kind of like renting it basically for 2 years. And then,
essentially.
And then selling it probably for more than you would have sold it at the 2 years prior. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's your superpower, I think, is that you're really good at simplifying things. Yeah. And, that you didn't know what the hell it looked like to be, to do owner financing, but let's give it a shot and see what happens. So I think that's a huge piece of it. Another kind of thing you talked about, made me think about part of something you wrote about in your book was the 3 C's. I'm going to forget what the third one is. It's contracts, contractors, and capital. Yeah. Yeah. And the idea that if you have 2 of those things, you can find the third, or really even if you have one of those things, you have one of those things, you basically, that's where partnerships come from is those things, and using those to get going. If you don't have the money, but you have the deal and you have the people to do the work, or you can do the work or whatever, then you can get a deal going. So it sounds like you kind of utilize that through those.
And that one that we did in New Albany, that was the last time I put any money into a deal for probably the next 2 years, 3 years. And because I didn't want to use my own money, like I had bills to pay. And I had also just gone through a divorce. I had switched brokerages. There's a lot of things going on in my life that people didn't see. Like everybody sees like, hey, you're doing really great. Like you're getting into the investment stuff. You're selling a lot of real estate. And they think that they associate money with happiness.
Sure.
And that wasn't the case for me. Like I struggled a lot.
Sorry. You good, man? I get it, man. It's all it's not always what it looks like on the front, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy because like, all right, I tell that story all the time about like my first year or two in real estate, and all right, give me a second.
You good?
I get upset every time I tell it. Because I didn't like the person I was. You know, I've sold real estate for money. And that's great. And you make a lot of money and you do a lot of things with it. And then I've sold real estate and done investments for people. And you get so much more from that. Yeah. So, like I said, for, you know, the next 2 years, we didn't use any of our own money and we didn't know how we were going to do it. I was like, hey, I can't keep putting money out of my own pocket.
Sure.
And so I was talking to my accountant at the time and was like, hey, I want to do more flips and I just need somebody with capital.
Right.
Like, I need somebody to like finance it for me.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, my mom's got a ton of money in Edward Jones. I think you guys should meet. And so we went out to lunch with her and we were like, hey, you know, she's like, I got, you know, I can't remember what it was, $300,000 or $400,000 in Edward Jones. And I was like, hey, what kind of return are you getting on that money? And she was like, oh, like 7 or 8%.
Right.
I said, great. I said, if we could borrow that money and guarantee that you get 10 to 12% on that money, would you let us borrow it instead so that we could buy real estate and flip it and then pay you back in, you know, 6 months or less? And she's like, well, yeah. And I was like, the thing is like the money that we borrow from you is guaranteed. The money you have in Edward Jones fluctuates with the market. You know, if the market crashes, you lose it. If the market goes up, you make money. That's great. And so that was our first partnership that we had. Yeah. And we had no idea what we were doing at the time. Like we were just borrowing money and, you know, just owner financing stuff or using somebody else's capital to do it.
Right.
And I used her as my partner for probably the next 4 years.
What? I think that's smart. I think you said, I don't, guaranteed may be a strong word, but I don't know that there's much else out there that's as guaranteed as real estate. You know, I tell people all the time, I mean, what are the things you need most in life? It's like food, water, shelter. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, real estate's always going to be a thing. And in the long term, it's always going to go up. Yeah. You know, so.
Well, it's tied to real estate, you know, like just like you have your payment to the bank, like the bank's guaranteed that money because if you don't pay it, they take the house. If we don't pay her, she takes the house. And she knows that she's walking into equity if she takes that property.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you the question. And I think you do a little bit of both, but what, rent or flip?
Rent or flip? It depends. In the beginning, all it was flipping. Like we would flip, 15 to 20 houses a year and not using any of our own capital. Like we just found people that had money that wanted to let us borrow it. And what we realized very quickly was that there's no tax savings when you flip homes. And impossible. We didn't know that till we filed our taxes. And I was like, oh my gosh. So we just started buying rentals like maybe 2 years ago. I think it was November of 2023. We bought our first rental. Gotcha. And the reason we did that is because I had heard about like, hey, that's where all the tax savings are. I read a book called Tax-Free Wealth. And they were talking about depreciation on your asset and how it can lower your taxable income. And so I just sat down and was trying to figure out the math and was like, hey, we're getting all this income from our flips, but then we're just spending it. Yeah. Like I don't even know what we're spending it on at this point. Like we're just wasting it. Right. We use some of it maybe for a down payment for a hard money lender, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, like I don't see that money in my account and I don't like that.
Yeah.
and we still have a tax bill to pay at the end of the year. And so figuring out how many, like every time we flip a house and we get income from it, we get profit from it, how many rentals do I need to buy in order to offset that income I made from my flip? And the first 18 months that we started buying rentals, we had 22 doors. Like we bought 22 doors over 18 months.
Okay.
Just because we already had the flipping thing down really quick.
Yeah.
And so we have a ton of income coming in. So now it's, hey, let's figure out where we're going to place that income so that we can offset what we made on the flip.
So your flipping business is basically to support getting more rentals.
That's it. Yeah.
I think that's smart. So so these days now, do you finance all your own deals, or are you still using other people's money in different situations?
We do. So like if we have 3 or 4 going on at any given time, 1 or 2 of those may be with our own cash, and then the rest of them would be with partners.
Gotcha.
And so when you have a partnership, you're looking for capital.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 ways that you can do that. And I always tell people like, hey, it's based off of your, risk versus reward. What's your risk tolerance?
Right.
And so for me, like my risk tolerance is high. My wife now, Ryan, her risk tolerance, well, it's a little bit higher now, but when we first met, like it was extremely low.
A little bit.
Yeah, it was extremely low. And so when you're talking to people, like ask them, like, what's your risk tolerance? If they say low, they're probably more interested in like letting you borrow money and then they get a guaranteed interest rate that they're going to get back over the course of a year. And it's annualized. So if you keep it 6 months, they're going to get 6 months worth of interest. Right. They're not getting the full like 10 to 12%.
Exactly.
And then if someone has a higher risk tolerance, they might want to be a partner. And so like we talked about, like the 3 C's. Return, so the 3 C's, like you got to have the capital, the contractors, and the contract. Yeah. And so I already knew I could find the contract. You're in real estate. You're the first one that sees things. So like you'll always have that. You have relationships with your contractors, so you always have that. And so we just had to find people that had money and then ask them what their risk tolerance is. Sure. And so we've done it both ways, where we borrow money from somebody and pay them an interest rate. And then other people, we do a 50-50 partnership on it to where they fund the entire project 100% and then they get 50% of the profit. Right.
So do you use, in terms of finding deals and finding capital, I know I read in your book, one of the things you use a lot is your sphere of influence. You're just kind of basically combing through the people and basically finding what their risk tolerance is, what, if they're interested in real estate investing. Is that pretty much where you find your deals and capital?
Our deals come primarily from like wholesalers. Okay. Like we have great relationships with a lot of wholesalers in the area. And the reason we have great relationships is because we actually close on the deal. Yeah. So if you get on like any kind of investment group on Facebook, you'll see people say they have a deal and then there'll be 200 comments about send me information. And out of those 200 comments, there might be 4 that actually want to move forward and buy something. And so once you buy, 2 or 3 deals from a wholesaler, you're the first person they're going to call because they know that you're actually going to perform on it. Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely.
Well, we're getting pretty close on time here. Wanted to ask you just a little bit more about your book. Number one, can you tell us a little bit about it or where you can get it from?
Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. And the only reason we wrote the book was my real estate coach at the time, we were teaching an investment class. We had 2 of them, and we were teaching it to investors and agents across the country. And we made the decision like, hey, we're going to write a book about this. And I have ADHD, so it's like I get hyper focused on something. Right. And he's like, hey, let's work on this. Come back next week and let me know where we're at on it. And I called him 48 hours later and was like, hey, the book's done. And I probably spent 18 to 20 hours over those 2 days doing nothing but writing that book. Yep. And the book's not long. It's like 39 pages or something.
Super quick read.
Yeah. And so, you see these investor books that are 200 pages. And I'm like, the information that I want to get to people, I don't need it to be fancy or have big words or be 200 pages long. Like most people just need, hey, how do you get into it? How do you do it? How do you get past the mindset of it? And so I just took everything that I know about investing and how I got started and what I do, and I just put it in the book. Yeah. And most people will always say like, hey, I'm not going to invest in real estate because I don't have the capital. Capital is the least of your problems. I can promise you. There's always money out there.
Where there's a deal, there's a way.
Always. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the name of the book?
It's Real Estate Investing, Your Path to Financial Freedom. So I know it's not a fancy name, but I just wanted to do
maybe we can throw it
simple
in the comments or something like that for people that don't remember. But put a link to Amazon or something. Yeah. But yeah, super quick read. I see it as it's like, I'm sure you get people ask you all the time questions about real estate. And it's like, you can answer that question or you can read this book in literally an hour or 2. Like
it doesn't take
It's long. A super quick read, but it has a lot of good information, a lot of good baseline information. And well, awesome. Appreciate you coming on today. I'm going to give my little pitch here at the end.
Absolutely.
I always say, we do this to get more information out to people, to meet the people of the area, to learn more about the area. But we do also sell houses. So if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the area, reach out to us. We'd love to help you. So, Jesse, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. All right.
Yeah. Cool.